No, man, but you got to keep going. What am I going to do, quit? That's not an option. You got to keep on keeping on. Life's a garden, dig it. You make it work for you. You never give up, man. That's my philosophy.
Hey gardeners, I hope you're all having a great week. Hope you're getting to get some seeds sown out for your garden coming up this year. We've already got some of our peppers starting to pop up out of our soil here in our seed starting trays. I think I see another one here, as well as this guy here is really getting going. It's still got its seed there stuck on the cotton leaves, but yeah, they're getting growing. They're going now. We got probably more coming up here, ready to pop up any day now. But yeah, really exciting. We got our garden season started here with our pepper seeds and all of our pepper starts. You got anything growing in your garden already? All right, everyone, let's get growing. All right, everybody. Welcome, all of you garden enthusiasts and passionate plant people to the Let's Get Growing show right here on the Urban Gardener channel. I'm Enoch. I'm your host today, and thank you so much for joining with us. We've got a really, really great show for you today, so you want to stay tuned. You want to stay tuned for sure. We've got back on the show this week our friend Jenna from Growfully with Jenna, who's going to be our featured guest here just a little bit later on in the show. So you're definitely going to want to stay tuned for our conversation with Jenna coming up here. So yeah, right on, right on. Again, thank you all so much for being here today. A little bit of a late start, so sorry everybody. Just trying to get some things together here, but yeah, really great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining with us. And if you are here with us right now, definitely click the thumbs up, hit the like button, and hit the subscribe button as well too. If you haven't subscribed already, definitely do that, and hit the bell notification so you can be notified of all of our upcoming live streams, shows, and videos as well too. We've been putting out some videos, so you'll want to check out our video or homepage here on the YouTube channel. Check out some of our recent videos. In fact, I think I put a link down below in the description, so after the show you can even go check out our newest video we did on getting our peppers going. So I'm going to take and do a whole series this year. It's kind of one of the things I wanted to do. I wanted to do trying to make some more like subjective type videos instead of just our general garden journals, which we're going to do as well too. But I wanted to make more kind of some things, you know, specific to some of the things we do. So I thought a really cool, fun series on doing all of our peppers that I grow, because pepper is one of my favorite things. You guys hear about it all the time. I love all the different varieties there are. I love how the plants grow. The pods are really awesome, you know. So there's so many things to love about peppers and growing peppers, and so that's kind of my idea, was to create kind of a whole video series on the system that I use to get them started indoors, how I you know, take care of them indoors several months before we get them out close to our last frost date, and then you know, take you through the whole process of how I get them transferred from indoors to outdoors. You know, how we do the hardening off process. You know, transferring, what kind of soils we use, all sorts of just really great information that I'm going to give in this series and everything too. So we just got it started. We just got it kicked off with our first video, and I got a link for it, like I said, right down below in the description below too. So you want to go check that out if you want to follow along with our pepper growing and everything else as well too. Like I said, I want to get back into the swing of things when it comes to doing the regular video content for our channel. I got several things coming up. Plus, like I said, our garden journals. So we're going to do those as well too throughout the year. So again, like I said, you want to make sure that you're subscribed and hit that bell notification so that you can get notified of all those upcoming videos as well too. And then share with your friends. Share with your friends. Big huge shout out to all of you who are watching our replay. Thank you all who are taking your own time to check out our show. Like I said, we've got a great show ahead for you today. We've got Jenna from Growfully with Jenna coming up here just a little bit later in the show. That's going to be a really fun conversation. Really enjoyed having her on the show last year, so it'll be great to catch up with her and see what's growing on for this new year as well too. So we got a great show ahead for all of you who are watching us here live or on the replay. If you are here with us anyway, get into our comments, get into the chat. Let me know what you think of the show. Let me know if you got any questions. Let me know if you got any suggestions as well too. I'd love to hear some suggestions too. So if you are here live though too, remember I'd love to hear any comments or questions that you might have. So definitely drop those into the chat as well too, and put all of your questions into big capital letters if you can, and that way I can see those from the conversation. And yeah, right on. I already see, and I was getting everything ready too, and this has probably got to be one of the more livelier shows that has started and happened prior to the show actually starting. I saw as I was getting ready the comment section already getting going. Everybody's already been having such a great time, having a great conversation. I want to kind of dip in here and see if I can't give a couple of people a shout out here. Let's see again too. I don't know. There's a lot going on here in this conversation here. I try to find. Oh, here we go. Here we go. In fact, all right. Of course, real quick here too, and I will just say this though as well too. I see Jay here put the time for the show, telling people about the time here. Jay isn't in the conversation right now, actually, as everybody might notice. Jay is actually in the wings right now here in the studio, not feeling too well, but well enough to come and join with us and have a conversation for a few minutes here too. So that's another treat for you guys here today as well too. So I might as well let everybody know that. That's why you don't see Jay in the conversation right now, because she's actually waiting here to jump on here in just a couple of minutes here. We'll have a conversation with her as well about what she's got growing on here coming up in the new year. And I'll just say that, we usually have our Are You Following Me segment. That's our first segment. But again, scheduling things kind of happen when you have a live show. But that's why we've got a great facilitator that facilitates our show and our chat every single year or week here on the show. And it's always great to be able to kind of pull her out of the chat sometimes and have a fun conversation with Jay. So we'll have her on here in just a moment. I just wanted to kind of flip through here and see if we can't see a few people and say hi. I see Bowtie Life in the Garden there. Yep. There we are. How's it going, Bowtie? Good to see you. Mobius, I see you. He says, "Oh, you found us all." Yep. Here we are. Great to see you here. Shield joining with us from over on uh, Nate's channel there, Viking Garden Like a Viking. He just got finished up with his live stream, so I see a couple of people have jumped over. We did kind of shout out the show, and that we had Jenna on the show at the end of his live stream there. So it's good to see some of you all here too. I see we've got I Am Human Jake. Awesome, Jake. Good to see you here. And John Jude, J. Jackson, you returned, so hopefully you're feeling better. Yeah, we'll get a good report on that here in just one moment, John, as well too, for sure. Like I said, she's in the waiting in the wings here right now. Let's see. I see Rick was in here from down in Australia. He said no YouTube notification. You didn't get your YouTube notification. Well, at least you made it. You figured it out. Joining us from the future in Australia there. And let's see here. We got Rob's Allotment Gardening joining with us there from over in the UK as well. Right on. And let's see here. I see Meyer Lemons saying hi there as well. Right on. And Let's see here. John saying big welcome to Jenna and everyone as well. Yep. Awesome. Awesome. Yep. We'll have Jenna on here in just a little bit. Good to see you, Val. Thanks for joining with us here. Right on. Right on. Let's see. Oh, Brian jumping in here. I see even a question right on. What do they need a heating mat? Let's get going. Heating mat for the peppers. Yes, I use a heating mat to kind of warm them up a bit. And once I see most all of the little peppers popping up out of the soil and all of that, once most of them, a good majority of them have popped up out of the soil, then I'll remove the heating mat at that point. Yep, just to get them germinated. Let's see here. Dave says he is always on time. Yeah, I was really, not today for sure. Jersey girl, good to see you there. Right on, right on. Let's see. Like I said, just kind of scrolling through here. And okay. Like you said, we got a great conversation going on already. I see Sam in the conversation. Awesome. Dusty Flats as well too. Right on, right on. Sorry if I'm not getting to everybody. Let's see here. Just have a good garden blab. That's right. We're gonna have a good fun garden conversation. That's for sure. All right. So let's see here. Good to see everybody. Like I said, so many great people in here. I see Mill Creek Market jumping in as well too, having a great conversation already today. Again, thank you all so much for being here. We've got a really great show ahead for you all. We got Jenna from Growfully with Jenna coming up here just a little bit later in the show, and then like I said, I've got waiting in the wings right now our facilitator, our good friend Jay Dixon, is going to jump in, and we're going to check out what's growing on for her coming up here in the new season, and lots and lots of things coming on up here on the show for you. So again, thank you all so much for joining with us. We'll be right back here in just a moment, and we'll be right back at it. Let's Get Growing is sponsored by IV Organic.
Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with IV Organics, where we grow cool plants and author Saving the World with the Home Garden. IV Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard has 7 natural oils that protect your plants, not just from the summer heat as well as winter cold, but also protects your plants from damaging insects and rodents. The oils in the product include castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint.
Oh, hello. Hopefully, am I live? Oh my. We have had a technical glitch there. I'm sorry. I'm going to restart that here real quick here. I don't know what happened there, but something went down. Let's see if we can't fix it here real quick. Let's Get Growing is sponsored by IV Organic.
Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with IV Organics, where we grow cool plants and author Saving the World with the Home Garden. IV Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard has 7 natural oils that protect your plants, not just from the summer heat as well as winter cold, but also protects your plants from damaging insects and rodents. The oils in the product include castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. These oils are natural insect and rodent repellent oils, which are encapsulated by the base powder, offering your plants months of protection at a time. One application per year will suffice for protection against damaging summer sunburn and winter sun scald, but if the target is pest, application as much as 2 to 3 times a year may be necessary.
Hi everyone, this is Sarah from Sarah's Seed Shop, here with another trivia question. Which of the following is not a variety of broccoli? A. Lunchbox, B. Paradise, C. Happy Rich, or D. Green Globe? We'll be back with the answer a little later in the show.
So, all right. You got the answer to Sarah's trivia question there this week. If you do, jump into the chat, or if you're joining with us on the replay, let us know down in the comments there before we get the answer from her just a little bit later on in the show. And yeah, definitely, like I said, I see a lot of people still joining in on the conversation there. Thanks everybody for joining with us today. And like I said, I've got a lot of things growing on in the garden right now as far as getting prepared, getting things, thinking about things, what we're going to be doing as far as changing things up. I was spending some time actually this week just hanging out in outdoors, just kind of assessing things, kind of maybe writing a list of some things that I need to get done. I mean, because during the winter time, I kind of let some things go. And so now there's a lot of cleanup and things that we got to do to get things reset. So kind of just, that's kind of what we're doing this time of year. We're kind of assessing things, at least in some of our more colder regions where things are just a bit too cold out there for us to get out and do much. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. So I'm assessing and looking at some things, hopefully be able to get out there, get some certain things, get them started, and really just kind of creating a timeline that can get me well ahead of things when we get going into this springtime coming up here, which really just, it's, to me, it's already surprising how fast this month is going. So it's telling me that spring will be right on its way before we know it. So I better be on top of some of these things right now before the list gets too big to really accomplish, as things start piling up if I'm not getting to them right now. So that's kind of where we're at. We want to see where you're at. Tell me what you've got growing on in your garden. Jump into the chat there. Let us know. Let me know what you've got planned, what you're thinking about, any sort of new things you've got growing on in your garden, and we'll also find out from our very next guest that we've got coming on here. As I was just telling you all just a little bit ago here, I've got waiting in the wings right now, and that's why you don't see her very much in the chat right now. She's usually in there chatting with all of you and doing things, dropping in links and all of that sort of stuff. Each week we are so fortunate to have just a really amazing facilitator for our show, and we had kind of a scheduling issue for our first segment, the Are You Following Me segment this week. So I thought, this would be a great time to catch up with Jay and see what she's got growing on in her garden coming up this year. As like I said, we're all in this kind of planning phase, and I know she's in a cold region right now, so this would be kind of a great opportunity to kind of see what she's doing as she's thinking about sort of things and planning what's coming up here for the growing season. So without further ado, let's bring Jay on to the show here. All right. There we go. Jay's with us here. How's it going? Great to see you here.
Unfortunately, I'm not feeling too super perky today, but
Yeah.
I'm glad to step in and give you a hand today.
I know better than not having anyone at all. Like was my what my situation was just yesterday. As I was like, oh no, it's day before the show. I need to figure something out now. And so it's always great to be able to call on Jay from our chat. I figured, we got you here all the time anyways, so it's kind of great to get you on video and kind of catch up with what's going on and what's growing on. And hopefully, fortunately, you'll be feeling better soon. But even this, even again too, further to kind of further the point I was kind of making right now, is that this is kind of one of those times a year where a lot of us in colder regions are, kind of, there isn't much growing on in the garden right now. This is the time of year where, we've collected our seed catalogs, we've been kind of thinking about certain things. So this is really a planning time of year for a lot of us, and even more so if you're stuck indoors or stuck at home because you're not feeling very well as well either too. So I guess that is a good fun way to spend that time indoors with your seed catalogs all spread about you, your ideas and thoughts about what could be growing on in the garden in the upcoming year. So is that a lot of the activity going on at your house right now?
Well, unfortunately, I again have not been feeling very well, but so I've been super focused on that. So what I'd really like to
Yeah.
see is perhaps a little bit of life in the chat for people to ask any particular questions or thoughts that they may have regarding planning and hoping and dreams and actual projects that they're doing to try and get their gardens started for next year. Um,
Yeah.
so, a few of my thoughts right now, not super well developed, is I've been really paying attention over the last 2 to 5 years about the cost and availability of fresh fruits and vegetables. And certainly in my area, the prices have just skyrocketed. It actually appalls you when you start tracking what it used to be. And thanks for all the call outs for the J-Bot throughout the chat there that Enoch is highlighting for me.
Yeah.
And all the well wishes regarding my health. But back to my thought about prices and availability of produce. Essentially, because we're gaining the skills and knowledge of gardening, we are taking some of those things that are vital to our lives within our own hands. So you're having much more uh, control, much more availability for you about not what the market forces tell you is the right thing to have or to get, or the quality or the price. You're putting it within your own skill set, and maybe not just for you, maybe for your friends, for your family, for the food bank. There's various ways that, because you are learning many of these different skills and knowledge, that you are helping yourselves, but also helping those in the circles around you. And I'm fairly community minded. And so I really like that idea that we are essentially building to a short term, medium term, and in some ways a long term future by sharing with each other and gaining these skill sets through
Mhm.
formats like today, in which we're going to be learning later from our feature guests, but also just in the chat, sharing other ideas with each other, supporting sponsors and stuff like that, that gradually we're building up a community that's growing
Yeah.
in more ways than one.
Yeah, I completely agree with that too. And that's, something I've been thinking a lot about too. Um, lately is, I've been talking to a few other people, and, just kind of this idea of, how much, we all need kind of community at times. And that's one of the things that gardening is really, something we can really do more in that area. Actually, I have several community gardens that are around my neighborhoods that I go and visit. One that I actually garden out of, and it's great to be able to get together and hang out and share ideas with each other, to encourage other people who are showing up to learn and all of that as well too. And I think that's where kind of my mindset has been, just a little bit more so this year and a little bit last year too, as I kind of went into this other community garden that just got started up, and went to, and started talking with them and all of that this last year. So it was just something that's kind of been growing more in me, is what more can I be doing locally in my own community to encourage others and to bring people together to do things. And a lot of that too has been, and maybe even more so, some things I've been thinking about is utilizing my own space, because I've got a really public facing spaces. I mean, my gardens kind of run along a couple of alleyways. It's been really common for me for, several years that I've gardened in the spaces that I have, that I've got neighbors and people who walk through and are constantly, stopping by and checking things out and all of that. And I thought maybe there's something more I could capture from that, and bring together people and do some things with the actual spaces I have to maybe encourage other people to find ways of using uncommon spaces that people aren't thinking about a lot to grow and do things and stuff as well. So again, too, I really kind of agree with that idea of the community, for sure.
So I think there's various ways that ideas pop up for many of us. And for example, just in the things that you've been discussing a few minutes ago, projects that I haven't quite taken on, but that I've been meaning to, have popped up. For example, I garden, most of my visible public gardening is a community garden plot that is a medium level transition of people just kind of moving through the space. And I'd like it to become more of an educational center. And there's certain things that are easy and possible to do. For example, just simply adding nice, clear plant tags. So when someone says, what is that thing? There is the name. But maybe things like QR codes and things like shows like this that I play some part in. Hey, do you want to learn more about gardening? And provide even a cheaply, very basic sign that's maybe even done
That's a great idea.
inexpensively, just saying, hey, do you want to learn more about gardening education? Provide a QR link to this, for example, so that people can take different levels of learning and move it on. I really do think that life offers us all kinds of opportunities to further our own gardening education, but also to bring into the fold other people. So when I see newbie gardeners in our 40-person public garden, and I see 2 to 3 new ones, some of them look really, really lost. And the types of conversations and discussions they're having are good, but concerning, because they're about to make decisions that might set them back 2-3 years in their gardening progress. And I kind of sidle over there and go, hey, by the way, I'm pretty experienced at gardening. Would you like some advice that's going to make it more likely to be a success for you? So trying to do different things to help them set themselves up for a good gardening success of short-term information just in the moment, but kind of mostly they let me kind of take them under my wing, so to speak. And I do different things to give them gardening seeds, to give them advice, to have a way to contact me when they're about to make a decision and they're not sure if it's a good gardening decision or not. Because I didn't learn some of the things that I did by being smart and knowledgeable at the beginning. Okay? I learned several years of sad, bad mistakes, but yet, boom, I've got some young people about to make the same sad, bad mistakes. And it's like, oh, wait, hold on for 1 minute. Can I help you through this?
Yeah, exactly. And being there to give people that opportunity to be able to learn just a little bit more about growing and that sort of stuff. Because again, like I said, you yourself, you're really involved with your community, and that so people know that you're a person you can come to, in a sense. Similar in a way for me is that people can see my gardens as they're passing through and all that. Maybe there's a way I can extend that out and bring people together, so that again, because ultimately it's one thing about getting and learning advice from all the different gardeners and growers we get to learn from, yourself, Jenna, coming up here in just a little bit, there's a lot of value and a lot of good general garden knowledge, garden, in some ways I like to think inspiration in a way. But really, if we're really wanting to learn some things in our gardens, then it brings back to me again this idea I've been thinking more and more about in the idea of community, is that's really where our best gardening advice comes from, is people right in our own community, because they're growing right there. They're, you know what I mean? There are neighbors, there are people who are, and hopefully have some level of experience over years of growing right there in your own area. You know what I mean? So that's really where you're going to get your best advice from. So, being available to people within your own community to allow, them to learn more, or to have access to learning just a little bit more. And I like that point you made there too, when they're about to make a gardening decision, you know what I mean, that they're not sure of. It's kind of like, in a way, if you think about it in a way, it's kind of like a gardening sponsor. Be a gardening sponsor in a way, so that we can call on you when they're just not sure, or about to do something they don't know they might regret or not.
Well, one of the things I jokingly call this name, I could come up with a better name, but I make an effort most gardening seasons to do what I call adopt a newbie. So I pick one newbie gardener, or ideally two, and the ones that are willing to let me give them a reasonable amount of well-meaning advice to help move them along in their gardening decisions, I do that. And in my mind, I'm committing to a minimum of 20 to at least 40 hours of sometimes very hands-on hard work to help them establish really excellent garden beds, to give them seeds, for them to email me when they're going, hey, we're about to plow up our garden. What do you think of that? And I'm generally no-till, but I'm not absolute no-till. It depends on the situation. But for our situation, I much preferred no-till. So sometimes I'll do things like say, hey, for your gardening plot, I'd actually really prefer no-till. What is the reason you're about to till? Oh, we want to get rid of all those weeds. Well, let me correct you on the idea that tilling under those weeds are going to get rid of them. That's hiding them for a few weeks while you've made thousands of babies. What?
That's right.
You created a weed nursery if you go ahead. Now, here's an alternate plan, and it's just one plan. We could do a few. But my alternate plan is, hey, can you hold off on the tilling for 2-3 days? I'll come there, and hopefully you as well, and we'll get those weeds out of there, gone forever, gone. I'll hand pull them out, and we're not going to create a weed nursery, and it won't cost you any money, and I'll help you do it, and I'll help you tell which are common weeds if you choose to join me some of the time, and then for years afterwards, you're going to have less weeds in there.
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure it works that way? A lot of people till. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Would you like detail on why that doesn't quite work in most circumstances? So, yeah. So, I usually really love that adopt a newbie thing, because I'm trying to give people a foundation of strong support in that first year to second year. And then year 3 or 4, I'm kind of letting go of that hand a little bit, so that they know they can contact me for advice once in a while, either in the garden or by email, but it's less and less so, and they build up the confidence. And one of the reasons why I do this adopt a newbie thing, and I forget where I've read this, and I can't swear to the accuracy, but I remember reading several articles suggesting that newbie gardeners, somewhere around 70%, do not stay with gardening the second year.
Oh, that's 70. That's
70% drop off, like that do not garden into the second year. Now, again, I don't have the stats to be able to look this up for its accuracy.
Right.
I read it from several sources, and it chilled me, because here's all these eager, happy, wannabe gardeners dropping off for whatever reason. And gardening is both simple and complex. Some of the answers are put a seed in soil, water, conditions, away you go, sun happening. Other parts of it, of aspects of it, are so complicated. And I just felt that making my, I guess you say, JBot encyclopedia knowledge of decades of gardening experience available to people allows for a quick sort of information when they have a problem and give them a likely simple solution without them going through a lot of agony, so that success is built up in that first year or two, so that they're more likely to weather the storms of what is gardening in its full experience, which is success and losses, you know?
Yeah, that's true. And just got to kind of go with that flow when it comes down to it. I wanted to get this question in. Serena did drop it in and was asking, and this has, I think, a lot to do with your facilitating. Do you have a queue of websites saved and categorized so that when a person asks a question about a subject, you can go to that category in the queue and select the website, copy and paste it? So I guess she's just kind of wondering, like, what is your strategy? Because
Yes.
really when it comes down to it, you're a really amazing facilitator. We go beyond the word moderator, that for most part, moderators are great, but you go even a step ahead, and you're really out there working to drop in links and put in more information on things to help guide people through what the conversation going on the show is, really, in a way, to help people with further information in a way. Or maybe I mention a website, or they mention some sort of organization that they're involved with or something like that. And you're always just seem to be right on it, ready to go, and next thing you know, boom, there's a link to go check out that organization, or there's a link to go along with that sort of say a gardening method we're talking about, or something like that. You're just really on top of that. So what kind of goes into what everybody really calls the JBot, in a sense?
Yeah, that's a very interesting quirk of my mind. Is ever since I've been young, I've been kind of like a really interesting information processing machine myself. And it means that I have a very innate curiosity and sorting process in my brain. So as soon as I see something, a question, a problem, a situation, whether it be in this format or in other things in life, automatically my brain almost goes into like a hunger status of, oh, how could I learn about that? How could I learn more about that? And it literally is almost like a magnetic draw into, wow, that could be so fascinating, that question, problem, situation. How could I learn more? And my brain goes through a very fast, almost a computer-like source of sorting of what would be the most simplistic and most clear way in which I could convey getting that information. What are the available sources to me? And boom, 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 I'm doing it. And in this particular format, I'm actually doing it live. Nothing is pre-prepared. Nothing is bookmarked. Nothing is ready. As soon as you ask a question, my brain goes to, what are the most clear but precise words I can use to sort and find for that? And then when I do that, I look through 3 to 5 sources of information, and my brain is saying, how reliable and how valid is that source? This is while I'm multitasking other things like watching the show, hearing what you and your special guests or speaker are saying. I'm also looking at the currently focusing chat while I'm looking through all this stuff, sorting, trying to make sure that what I give you is very accurate and precise, so that you are getting what you need to know in the short term, less than 200 characters or so, but also trying to give you the ability to find a 3 to 30 minute précis of what is that topic, so you can do a deeper dive of education beyond what you've asked or what the speaker is choosing to discuss, or something that has been brought up by Enoch. The key thing is that I really love the idea of deeper learning. And one of the reasons I've developed this into this facilitator role is I want people to have the opportunities dropped in to do that deeper learning. And I want it to be from reputable sources so that I'm not
Yeah.
accidentally misleading you. And so
Yeah.
it's happening live, baby. It's happening live.
Just like we are right here live, right on the show. That's one of the
Yes.
things I love about it, and I really appreciate all that you do, and so does everybody else. Like I said, everybody looks forward to having you in the conversation as well too through the chat each and every week as we're having fun here on the show. And you do again a great job at making sure that people get again that little extra bit that you offer when it comes to the sort of things that we're trying to do here. And so we really appreciate everything you do, Jay. And again, thanks for jumping on here too. Not feeling too well. You were kind of worried about how things were going to go, and then everything went just fine, just great. It was really awesome to get the opportunity to chat with you.
Great. Well, I'm really glad that we developed into a growing community of support here. I'm super glad to see repeating names, the same people coming back, us developing a little bit of a culture amongst ourselves of supporting each other through questions and answers, and even sometimes things beyond the gardening stuff about what is happening for each other in our own personal lives. And I was hoping this community was going to start developing into that, and I'm super glad it's building that way. And it actually does warm my heart. I have a smile each time I see a returning name show
Yeah.
up on
Yeah.
here. Each name gives me a little secret smile that you people don't see. So each
Exactly.
time you come, I feel like I'm greeting an old friend, and I am super glad that you are all here.
Yeah, yeah. And right here, I see we've got Nate jumping into the conversation. I saw he was also asking about Jenna. We got Jenna coming up here in just a couple of minutes. She's waiting in the wings patiently here for her part of the show here coming up in just a minute. So good to see you, Nate. And he's like, "Is that Jay Dixon on the screen right now?" Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, absolutely,
yes.
absolutely. Yes,
Nate,
like I said.
I've been interviewed on this show a few times in the past for a full-length interview, and right now I'm just a brief filler before we move on our feature, which will be uh, Growfully with Jenna, who's an amazing, amazing guest.
Yeah, 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 absolutely, absolutely. Really looking forward to that. And again, to really as well to, any opportunity that we get to have you jump in on the show and have a fun little conversation with you is always great. And again, thank you so much for again, even not feeling so well, jumping in and again to getting a chance to conversate and talk with you about what's growing on in your garden this year.
Okay, great. Super. I'll see all the rest of you in the chat. Sorry if I'm not going to be quite 100% this week, but I will do my best.
Absolutely. Absolutely. See you in the chat. Hey, gardeners. Thanks for tuning in to our show today. We'll be right back at it here in just a moment. I just wanted to take a second here to highlight our regular videos and features here on the Urban Gardener channel. Our weekly garden journals, and our incredible feature visits.
The answer to this week's trivia question is D. Green globe is actually a variety of artichoke. Meanwhile, other types of broccoli include Chinese, Destiny, Blue Wind, and my personal favorite, Waltham 29. Thanks for watching. Head over to Sarah's Seed Shop where you can find garden seeds at unbeatable prices. Enjoy the rest of the show and have a great day.
All right, all right, all right. Did you get Sarah's trivia question correct today? And if you did, definitely great. Hooray. Awesome, awesome. But go and definitely check out Sarah's seed shop here at, I'm trying to, oh, there we are. Go to sarahseedshop.com and check out all of her really awesome seeds that she's got there. Great heirloom varieties, and at a better price than you're going to find anywhere online for sure. So definitely, while you're planning your upcoming garden this year, definitely go and stop by sarahseedshop.com. Go check out what she has available there. See if something that she has there is going to be an appropriate fit for your upcoming garden. She's got lots of great varieties, so I'm sure you'll find something there too that you can grow. And again, like I said, you won't find a better price, so definitely go check out Sarah's Seed Shop there too. And yeah, great. Great to do that. It's always great to see her and see what she's got going on for her trivia each and every week. So thank you to Sarah as well too for doing that for us each and every week here on the show. So right on. Time to get moving along here today. Like I said, we've got a really great featured guest for us waiting here to get on the show. So without further ado, let's get moving on here.
You never know when you might learn something, and that's what this is about for me. These are people that I admire. Please welcome my next guest.
So, all right. Returning to the show, we've got with us today Jenna from Growfully with Jenna. Awesome. So great to have you back here on the show. Thanks for joining with us today.
Well, thanks for having me again, Enoch. It's always a pleasure to be on the show with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So great. I've been really looking forward to today. So is everybody. Conversation's been going crazy today. Everybody's looking forward to talking with you. So again too, how things been going? We had you on the show this last year, so it's probably been about a year, maybe a little less, since we saw you last. How things been growing since then?
Pretty good. This last growing season was a challenging one here in Ohio. I mean, I feel like I say that every year, but it was a tough one. We were in severe drought situation for the majority of the second half of the growing season, well into the winter. I think we finally got out of that drought category just maybe a month ago or so. We got a lot of rain, a lot of snow.
Right.
So that definitely made things challenging. I still had a decent fall garden and still got some things in the ground, got some trees planted, some things I wanted to do, but I had to do a lot of extra watering for sure. And now we're in the dead of winter. We just came out of a stretch of negative Fahrenheit temperatures there for a while. It's like 32 today and it feels like a heat wave. So yeah, I'm enjoying the snow, but I'm definitely dreaming of spring right now.
Yeah. So, you fit exactly into kind of that category I'm talking about today. And we're touching on just a little bit earlier too, is that, that's kind of what this time of year is for a lot of gardeners, besides all of you gardeners who garden down in the South and in Southern California gardeners, and all of you are able to grow, it seems, all year long. But for some of us, this is kind of a repose in a way, this winter time where we have to kind of take a step back. We don't got much going on outdoors because, again, we might be covered in snow or ice, or the temperatures are just a little bit too cold for growing. And so we're kind of in that thinking about what are we going to be doing next year, what's coming up, what are, we're making plans, we're thinking about sort of things that we're going to be doing with our gardens, and especially for those of us, like who've got great big nice garden spaces like yourself, I'm sure there's a lot of things that go into planning out your garden, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And this year will be interesting because I'm actually planning quite a bit of revamping of my garden space. So I mean, it's always a work in progress. You know that the garden is always changing, always evolving. But I kind of got to the point where I have most of it in my home garden how I want it. But now my raised beds that my husband built for me about 5 or 6 years ago are starting to break down because we just did like untreated pine. So I'm looking at how I'm going to redo those for this year. I'm looking at adding. I'm always adding hugelkultur beds. So I'm looking at where I can add a few more of those. I'm looking at really spaces outside of my main, what I call my main fenced in vegetable garden,
Yeah.
in terms of what I can grow kind of in an alternative way. So an example I mentioned in one of my videos a couple months ago is I noticed that my winter squash and my pumpkins actually tend to do better when they're grown in just random spots, in spots that have a lot less sun than I would have expected that they needed. So that's going to be something I'm doing this year, is just playing around and experimenting with can I grow these things in like at the edge of my woods on my property? Can I grow these along the edge of the field? Where are some places I can put these that maybe aren't in my quote unquote vegetable garden, but
Yeah.
still be productive and still end up with food? Because not only is that fun for me, and that obviously pumpkins and winter squash are a crop that can potentially take up a huge amount of room, but I also
Exactly.
realize that so many people don't have the convenience that I do of having a large growing space. So every little spot matters. So if someone maybe has a small lot in town and they're limited on space, but they still want to grow a pumpkin, if I can figure out a way to do that in an alternative space that can help them, I feel like that's useful information for people to have. And yeah, like I said, it's the experimentation part of it is always fun for me as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And you got a lot of fun things going on there too. And I think that's a really great point too, because that also ties into what we were kind of talking about there, or at least I was mentioning just a little bit earlier too, about helping and doing things in more of a kind of a, I was thinking maybe like some community type of get-togethers or some things like that, But that's one of the things I do with my space, is maximizing it by using these spaces that you don't normally think about, that you're not really normally doing. And for people who are very limited with growing space, that can be a really helpful, insight to be able to think about and look at places that you wouldn't think about growing things and getting production from it where you wouldn't normally have gotten.
Yeah, and I love like the space that you have. I love to see people doing what you're doing with small amounts of like gardening in those small urban spaces, because there's a
Right.
kind of inherent beauty to having all of these plants tucked into this almost like little sheltered area. It's beautiful to me. It feels really good. It just has this lovely atmosphere when you're in a place like that. And I think you set such a good example for, like you said, you have a decent amount of like exposure. People walking by the
Right.
house can
Yeah.
see that, take inspiration from it, because I think we're kind of so stuck in this model, especially in urban areas, of like, this is what a lawn looks like, this is what a front yard looks like. I mean, I know sometimes like HOAs dictate that, but
Hmm.
I feel like we're kind of stuck there anyway. And when people can see an example like you're giving
Yeah.
them, it's so inspirational. And that's where, like, I love my place and I'm never going to move to town, but
Right. Right.
I always really enjoy seeing folks that are doing like what you're doing. I just think it's really cool.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that you turning it around on me there. But I really appreciate the things that you do and inspiring people with, and again too, you can utilize that sort of space even with as much as you got to be able to find some of those things to be able to kind of, share that same sort of thing. Because really a lot of people can garden and find spaces to garden that they wouldn't necessarily think that they actually could. And I think that's really fun in inspiring people to do so. I think we do have a couple of questions that are already kind of rolling in. So let's make sure, again, too, I want to mention to everybody out there that if you do have any sort of questions for Jenna, now's your opportunity to be able to ask them. She's here live with us right now on the show. So definitely jump into the chat right now and ask any sort of questions you want. But if you do have any questions or anything, if you could put them in nice bold capital letters, that way I can see questions from the regular conversation, and that way I can make sure I pull them aside to ask them, and I'll try to fit them into the conversation when I can as well too. But let's already check out a couple of questions that we've got here. Let's see. Oh, Meyer Lemons was asking, Jenna, how are your container blueberries doing? I'm planting 2 large chandlers into their own large metal raised bed, so they will be in a very large container. So yeah, raised beds, or in some sense, but more so, I got these elevated raised beds as well too, and they're big, they're good size and everything, but they're still kind of containers as well too in a way. But yeah, how are your blueberries doing?
So they're doing fine, but I really like this idea, and I think I may actually borrow Meyer Lemon's idea and transplant mine into a bigger metal container, because I actually have one around here somewhere, and I've been debating about what to do with it. But
Yeah.
I really like the idea of it giving them a larger space, but still having that containment.
Mhm.
Mine, the plants are fine. The trouble I'm having with them now is that the birds have discovered that they're there. My chickens have also discovered that they exist. So the last like 2 seasons,
Yeah.
I've had trouble with the birds flying in and eating the berries, or my chickens will just like jump straight up and grab berries off the bottom of the bush. I could put netting over them. I could take measures to stop these things. I'm just like at this
Right,
point,
right.
kind of like have at it. But I think I may actually do that. Assemble my metal bed inside of my fenced in garden and transplant my blueberries into that, because I think that would work really well.
Yeah, yeah. And definitely too, and again, me coming more so, and maybe this is still useful for someone with a larger space, but for me, having my blueberry bushes in containers been kind of helpful. I can kind of, with the limited opportunities for sunlight and all. Oh my gosh, I just went out. We went out again. Are we here? Am I still here?
I can hear you, but you're frozen on the screen.
Oh, I'm frozen on the screen. Oh no. Yikes. Oh my, I don't know what's happening here. We're having technical issues today, Jenna. So you say you can hear me though.
I can hear
This
you,
is great.
yes.
It always captures the best moment, doesn't it?
It really does. Yeah. This
Oh
was not
my.
terrible. I
Oh my. I
um
hope,
I
let's see here. I might have
I
to
was
take
gonna
myself out here, but what are you saying? I'm sorry.
I was going to mention with the blueberries in containers that I should
Yeah.
have mentioned before. I do mine in containers because our soil here in my area of Ohio is very alkaline, and I cannot amend it enough to be successful in ground with blueberries. I've tried various methods of like large raised beds. I've tried in just straight in ground. I've tried building beds specifically for blueberries, adding all the good acidic amendments. Um, it's almost impossible to keep the acidity levels in my native soil to the point where low enough to where blueberries are happy and thriving. So that's why for me, even with a lot of space, the containers, or I love the metal raised beds idea, is much better suited for my blueberries than just trying to plant them in ground. Oh no, I can't hear you now. Well, Enoch, I can't hear you, but um, I'm assuming everyone out there listening can still hear me and see me talking. Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's see, find another question here. Let's see. Question: will you have a program at the Columbus Garden Show in Columbus? Someone actually just contacted me about coming to that show. There was no mention of actually me doing a program, so I don't think that's in the works for this year. Let's see. How do you water your gardens? So this is from Venice Weeks. I think I saw someone else ask that same question about watering. And actually, a couple years ago, I did a video on this topic because this is one of the questions that I get probably the most, especially with it being such a large gardening space that I have. Drip irrigation would absolutely make sense. I actually don't use it. I have hesitated on pulling the trigger on drip irrigation for years. I say I'm going to do it every year to save myself some time, and I don't. But the issue I have with drip irrigation is that my water here in Ohio is very, very heavy. So it's very rich in iron. It's rich in a lot of mineral sediments. So we have issues with lines getting gunked up a lot. And with the drip irrigation, with those tiny little water holes, basically I can spend all the money to put the drip in and I'm replacing it every single year because it just gets gunked up with sediment. I have used soaker hoses. I've had those last, I think 3 years might be the most, and I'm not using them extensively. I generally only use soaker hoses when I'm planting fall crops in that. Oh,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you and see you. Yep.
Oh my gosh. No, go ahead and finish what you're saying
Okay.
there for sure. And then
the soaker hoses I'm generally only using to get my fall crops established. So typically with my brassicas, things like broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, I'm planting those in mid-July for a fall harvest. And as you can imagine, that time of the year, it can be very hot and dry here. So I'll put the soaker hoses down and use those just long enough to get my seedlings established. Otherwise, for general watering, I am hand watering. And I use sprinklers, which is not ideal because, again, here in Ohio, we deal a lot with fungal and bacterial diseases. And a lot of times that overhead watering from sprinklers can just make those issues worse. So I generally avoid doing that unless it's just like this year. We were just in drought for so long and I can't hand water the entire garden. So I just put up a big overhead sprinkler or two and let it run. Sometimes overnight I've done, or I'll do little, I have some of those stake sprinklers and I'll use those in my raised beds. The nice thing with I have very heavy clay soil where I'm at, and it's very annoying in many ways, but one of the benefits is that it holds on to water. So what I have found through the years is that if I'm working to improve my soil, but it still has a lot of clay in it. If I get it to a point where it's good and amended and I use a lot of natural mulches, I can usually get away with very little watering. Often in a regular year, I may water once or twice through the season and that's it. And that is in my in-ground beds. Raised beds, that's definitely not the case. But my in-ground garden beds, which make up most of my garden, I do very, very little watering. I also, this is another reason I'm looking at more hugelkultur beds. I really like that method because when you dig those trenches and put a bunch of big logs in the base of your hugelkultur bed, those big logs tend to soak up all the rain. So we typically get a lot of rain in the spring here, and then it tapers off to where we're getting nothing in the summer and the late summer. So all those spring rains, the big logs in the base of the hugelkultur beds soak that up. And then they actually will wick that water back out into the dry soil as the season goes on. So it's kind of almost functioning as a self-watering bed. And that I have found really, really useful for growing things, again, like outside of my main gardens, further from the house where I may not have great access with a hose or I don't want to walk that far with my watering buckets. So if I have stuff that I know that I want to grow out in the back, I'll typically do it in a hugelkultur bed. And that system has worked great for, again, like pumpkins and squash. I've got several fruit trees planted in one of my hugelkultur beds. I do a lot of brambles in my hugelkultur beds and various like native fruits. And that system has worked really, really well. So yeah, no drip right now. I keep thinking about it for my raised beds because those are a pain because they do dry out really, really fast. But for right now, my methods in the in-ground beds seem to be working okay. So I'm just going to stick with it.
Yeah. When you got that sort of setup, that really works. For me, like water systems and all that sort of stuff's really kind of necessary. Everything's kind of, above ground. Like I said, I've got these really cool, like above ground elevated raised beds, all of that. But to keep them through our hot summers, I've got to have a nice time system to keep them from drying out, because that would be the worst thing ever when it comes to that sort of stuff. I do have a cool, like kind of raised bed though that I did build out with hugelkultur that is really producing really well. That I think works really great. So we do give that a try as well too. So you find a lot of success with using that method?
Oh, I love it. I built my first bed, maybe 4 or 5 years ago at this point. I actually attended a conference years ago where a gentleman was talking about how they build hugelkultur beds, and I'm blanking on the name, but it's a farm in Ohio, and they actually did a replica of the serpent mound with hugelkultur on their farm.
Yeah.
And ever since I saw that talk, I was just fascinated with it, but I never got around to building my own. And so 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, I'm going to do it. And so I built my first one, and within like 3 months into the season, I was hooked. I started thinking like, how many of these can I build and where can I put them? So I've got three decent sized beds here at home, and I'm working on actually converting one of my garden rows fully into a hugelkultur bed. And then I've lost count of how many at my parents'. We've got several up in the front vegetable gardens. And then my parents have a large, kind of like a prairie that goes back to their woods. And we started digging like a huge swath of trenches for hugelkultur beds all along their paths that go through their prairie, with the intent to plant a lot of native trees and shrubs in those areas. Because again, it's so far from the house and we have no water back there. So I have no good way other than hauling buckets of water back to water all of these transplants. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I hate watering. Like, well, if I build hugelkultur beds, for the most part, they should be self-watering, and then I can plant all of my little trees and my shrubs and just kind of let them grow naturally. So that's a work in progress. My husband actually dug those trenches with a tractor about a season and a half ago. And what I like to do is we get all the logs in place and then basically leave those open and just dump all of our compost in over the course of a season or two, and then cover them back up when they're full with the dirt that we dug out of the trenches. So that will
when
be
you
a project.
say logs, though, when you say logs, are we talking like big, huge logs, medium, smaller?
So
What would you recommend as far as that? Are we thinking about size of logs?
yes, I mean, it's kind of whatever you have, but I like to start with a pretty substantial chunk of log in the very base. So I'm trying to think of the size of I typically try to dig my trenches at least 2 feet deep, ideally 4 feet deep, but that doesn't always happen. And then I'm probably putting logs in, what is that? Probably 2 feet in diameter if I can get them, and in just manageable chunks. That I don't always have nice, cut sections of logs available. So I'll just basically put my biggest stuff in the bottom, and then I'll start progressively getting smaller. So biggest chunks in the bottom, and then I'll do like smaller logs, and then I'll work my way up to throwing just like branches and sticks and whatever on top of that, along with all of the compost and like manure and whatever organic material I can get a hold of, kind of as layers. And
Yeah.
I find that that works really well. But yeah, I've had beds that I've built where I've only put, like 6 to 8 inch diameter pieces of like probably
Hmm.
branches chunked up in there. But in my bigger hugelkultur beds, I try to put really nice size chunks of wood.
Yeah.
And it can be freshly cut, but I
Not
live,
again.
oh no,
Oh no.
we we have a partially wooded lot and there's a lot of fallen
Okay.
trees, a lot of ash trees that are down. Yep, you're back.
Well, so far so good.
And
Okay.
so
Jeez.
so I just go out into the woods and a lot of times I'm just dragging up logs that are half rotten and throwing them in there. It's really just whatever I can get my hands on.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And again, yeah, so I don't know what is going on with my system today. It is having some issues, and there's something in the line going on. So again, actually, really quick too. Thanks again. First time I think in our show's history that I had to have a replacement host, and you did a great job just kind of talking there through all of that. I think that was really really awesome. So yeah,
You got
the
to love
only
those
other.
technical difficulties.
That's right. That's
Some-
right. Especially in a whole live situation. I'm like, oh, I hope that's because when I was disconnecting, now I'm like, I hope it doesn't disconnect the whole thing, and
oh,
that sort of thing.
yeah.
So then I was like, oh no, if that happens, then we're really ruined because there's no resetting up this situation. I'd have to reset a whole new one up and it'd be a
Oh
whole
no.
thing. So that's where I was really worried. So I'm like, oh no, did this all just completely fall apart? But no, in fact, you jumped in and did really great there and all of that. In fact, I was looking through here because I wanted to get back into questions and mention to everybody else that if you do have any questions, definitely drop them into the chat there. Put them in some big capital letters, and we'll get to those. I saw two earlier though, before all of that went down. Nate's in the chat there too from Garden Like a Viking, and he was asking about watering systems, but I think you really already kind of covered that anyways. I just wanted to mention that Nate was in there and all of that. Nate has a really great live stream. You should go check him out as well too, and go do his live stream. He's got some great stuff there. But thanks Nate for being in the chat with us as well. And let's see. Oh, I was seeing some things about onions. Let's see here. Dusty Flats was asking, how can I slow seedling growth in a warm house? What is best pot? I grow many and feel compelled to plant whole packet. So as far as onions, how can you slow seedling growth in a warm house?
Oh,
That's kind of a tricky
I
question, huh?
that is tricky. And I've mentioned
Because
this before.
warmth is
And
going to get them going,
yeah, I know not everyone agrees with this, but I trim my onion seedlings because otherwise they just get completely out of hand.
Oh yeah,
So
see.
I just typically when I've got my onion seedlings started indoors, I typically just once they get where I feel like they're just lanky and flopping over, I trim them down to an inch or two tall, and I will do that multiple times while they're indoors. I've in my experience that has lent itself to a sturdier seedling and it keeps that top growth manageable and it doesn't feel like they're just taking over my growing space. I when I transplant them out, however, I absolutely do not trim them after that point because trimming those tops after they're out in the garden is a great way to introduce pathogens into that top growth. So I definitely let them kind of heal over before I transplant. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, 5 times.
Mhm.
That sounds about what I'm doing too.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's tough because I know, like, many of you, I'm sure, experience the same thing. You're kind of limited on the spaces that you have available to actually start seedlings. So I do a lot of mine indoors in our kind of like our front living room area. And then I also have a small greenhouse out back. And generally, if I feel like, things like the onions and the spinach that are more cold hardy, I'll often just get them started in here. And then as soon as I feel like they're showing a few true, well, in the case of onions, it's hard to tell, but once they're showing a few true leaves or they're several inches tall, I'll move them out to that greenhouse. And just kind of, I've got a little heater out there, but I just keep it as cool as possible to where it's just above freezing. And that obviously slows things down, but it's tricky when you don't have that option.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of any way to, I don't have a great answer to that question. I'm sorry. Like in terms of how to slow growth down.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's again too, unless there's any sort of way in your house, you can find a place that's a little bit cooler for them. But then again, you need light. So again, being indoors, it's just kind of the idea is especially with things that are more cooler minded, they're definitely going to get going faster in a warmer environment for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's continue with some onions here. We had James ask earlier here too. Jenna, thanks for helping us succeed gardening. Do you know of any sweet bulb onions that store long? And then I think we answered this question already. The second question, would hugelkultur help raise beds from drying out? I think we pretty much answered that one a little bit earlier. But do you know of any sweet bulb onions that store long?
So, I mean, in my mind, when you say long storing onions, I'm thinking, something like my Pattersons that'll store for anywhere from 8 months to a year. When properly cured and stored, and there are not sweet onions that will store like that. I will say, however, that just my candy's still one of my go-tos in terms of a sweeter bulb onion. And I get decent storage out of my candies, like usually 4 to 6 months. Again, they have to be properly cured and properly stored, but 6 months is not unreasonable. And that's really, candy's about the only like sweet onion that I even bother growing.
Yeah.
So that's what I would recommend.
Candy.
Yeah. And I did want to say with the hugelkultur question, just to mention a couple caveats with that. I mentioned that I dig trenches for mine. That isn't always the standard. I mean, you can build a hugelkultur above ground, but I find that digging the trenches helps with the self-watering aspect. The deeper you can dig the trench and the taller you can build your mound, the more of that self-watering kind of trait you're going to get from it. Again, I'm blanking on the gentleman's name that kind of originated this whole idea or popularized it, but his suggestion was to build mounds that I think were like 7 feet tall, which is not feasible for me. I've never built one that tall, but I say in general 4 feet is a good height to shoot for. And that can be like, if I've got 2 feet of a trench, then I'm doing 2 feet underground and then 2 feet above ground. And that seems to work really well for me. The other thing is mulch. I mean, this is, I think everyone gets sick of me saying this, but even with the hugelkultur beds, mulch them. Do not leave that soil bare, because you're just going to get a lot of surface evaporation if that is the case. So I've mentioned before, my favorites are just grass clippings. I use leaf mulch in the fall.
Just the simple stuff.
Yeah, whatever you have access to, even if you can't get organic material and you have to do something like a tarp, anything is better than leaving that soil bare. So they definitely need mulched as well. And that's obviously going to vary on your climate. Here in Ohio, with the exception of this past growing season, we typically get intermittent rain through the summer season. So if you're in like a very, very arid environment, I'm not going to sit here and claim that like you don't have to water your hugelkultur beds if you're in the desert or something like that. But I will say that they're going to function better than just a typical in-ground bed, and definitely more so than a raised bed or a container.
Yeah, for sure. And continuing on with onions, do you buy? Think onion slips just being, just onion starts basically. Do you start from onion starts, or do you prefer to start from seed?
I do both. The one thing that I do not do is buy onion sets. So those the little
Right.
bulbettes that you
Yep.
get in those, I hate those with a passion.
Yes,
But
I
I do
so
the
agree.
starts, and
Absolutely.
I do my own from seed. Really, it would be a lot more economical to do all of my onions from seed. The trouble that I run into is just that remembering to have the seed on hand, like in December when I
Hmm.
need it. I, I know better, and I still forget almost every single year. So like this year, I bought all slips because it was January 1st, and I realized that none of my onion seed that I had here was any good anymore. So all my onions this year will be from starts. Ideally, next year I will buy my seeds and have them on hand in order to start them early enough. But I I need to just set myself a reminder in like November or something. But yeah, so I've done both. I've done the seeds in the past, and they work really, really well. And I like the seeds because I get more options in terms of varieties, and that's always fun for me. Um, so yeah, either or, they both ways work well for me.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, all right. And so uh Dusty Flats was asking, do you use heat mats for starting onion seeds? Yeah, no real need for that at all, huh?
No, I don't. I don't use anymore. I don't use heat mats on anything except for tomatoes and peppers and eggplant.
Yeah,
Those are
yeah.
the only crops I use heat mats under.
Yep, yep, for me too. And I was also mentioning that too as well because it was asked. I started the show showing my little peppers. I got some new little peppers popping up and everything, and they were asking about heat mats, and definitely same for me. Heat mats for peppers, tomatoes, eggplants, and I'll only use the heat mat long enough to get the seeds really germinated. So as soon as I see them starting to pop up, or in a sense of like I'm growing a bunch of different peppers, so I'm looking for a majority of them to start popping
Mhm.
up. Once I see like a majority of them start to pop up, then I go ahead and remove that heat mat, because
Yep,
that's all
I
we're really
agree.
looking for the heat mat for, is just for germination, just to give them that kickstart. Because peppers especially, I mean, they're just really finicky starters. They can take up to a month, if you're just letting them go, especially if you're starting them, say, outdoors a little bit later in the season and it's a bit cooler outside. It could take upwards of 5 weeks or more even for
Yeah,
some pepper seedlings to get started. So a heat mat can really help them get going. But for most anything else, it's just really isn't that necessary, especially for onion seeds, and again to things that are maybe just a little bit more cooler tolerant type of plants are going to, again, if you get them indoors or anywhere where it's semi warm, they're just going to start going, and then they're going to
yeah,
get growing. Yep, just get the conditions right and they're good to go. No need for heat mats on onion seeds. I think maybe we're talking onions. Let's just go onions or anything, I guess. Do you use hoop tunnels
I
for onion
use
hoop
low
tunnels?
tunnels,
Right.
but
Yeah.
I do not grow onions in them. I might be reevaluating that this year. I actually had
Okay.
what did I find? Army worms, I think, in my tops of my onion greens. I was finding
Yeah.
army worms inside of those greens last spring, which is not an issue that I have ever experienced before. Typically, I grow onions and I have no
Right.
pests, no diseases, nothing bother them.
All
So
right. Okay.
I might be testing out doing some under like in tunnels under insect netting versus some just free range in the garden, and seeing what kind of results I have next spring. But they're not typically something that I do in tunnels, except that is actually a good question because some years I do overwintered onions where I start them in. I'm trying to think of my timeline. I think I do my transplants out in September, just enough time to let them get established. I then keep those under low tunnels with like a frost type cloth over them until the
Okay.
spring, at which point that kind of gives them a jump start on growth and they'll resume growth in the spring at the proper time. And then I get a little bit earlier harvest versus my spring planted onions. So those I do in a tunnel of sorts, but not my spring onions.
All right. All right. And let's see. I think there was one more question. Yep. Brian was asking, when do you start your onion seeds?
The
Love all
earlier
the
the
onion questions, everybody. Onion. Let's cover some onions today.
better. So I figure if I don't have them started by January 1st, it's too late for me. I generally, and maybe, I mean, I can fudge that a little, like maybe the first week of January, but generally I like to have them started kind of the mid to the end of December is ideal for me. And that's giving me, like, I can transplant out. I'm usually aiming for mid March. That's our spring weather's so fickle, so it depends a lot. Like we can still have snow in March. It can be 80 degrees and not 80, but 70 degrees in March. So it kind of depends
Right.
on how the spring is going, but I'm typically like aiming for that mid March to no later than beginning of April transplant period. So starting mid to late December is a good timeline for me with onions.
Yeah. Get them started early, get them going. But yeah, let's see here. I think there was one more Brian was asking too. Will you now always do netting for Brussels sprouts? That's a good
Yes,
idea. Yes,
always.
do it. Oh my
I
gosh, I'm
do
telling you.
always netting for pretty much all of my brassicas.
Yeah, yeah.
We like cabbage worms are my pest number one on brassicas, but there continue to be more and more types of insects that are pressuring my brassica crops every single year. And insect netting is just hands down the easiest organic method of keeping those pests off of those crops. Brussels sprouts
Mhm.
in particular, because they are such a long season. I'm
Yeah,
typically I'm transplanting my Brussels sprouts out anywhere from, I used to do it mid-May. I do it a little later now because I'm growing shorter season varieties. But I mean, they're in the garden from, let's say, mid-June until I'm sometimes harvesting Thanksgiving time. So that's
right,
an
right.
awful long span to allow them to just be sitting out in the garden, because the cabbage worms, the cabbage white butterflies are
Yes, as I was
omnipresent.
saying. Yeah, that's like
Um,
what that's the start.
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
start of the problems that Brussels sprouts bring, and again, too, can be common for most other brassicas as well, too. And I really believe it's why I have. I mean, and I need to do more netting. I need to do more of that sort of stuff when it comes down to it, because, like you said, it starts with the cabbage moths. You know, those little white ones with that little black dot floating around your garden everywhere, planting their little eggs up underneath all of your little leaves there in places you can't find them either too sometimes. And so they start getting to work on those brassicas. But then for Brussels sprouts, though, they'll just attract anything and everything. I
they
mean,
will.
aphids get really bad, and just different types of aphids even. Spider mites will get going on them. Just all sorts of stuff. You got to really protect those things.
You do. And that's the only bad thing about the insect netting is despite trying to really get them secure into the ground, especially once my Brussels sprouts get to like mature size, keeping them netted to keep it works to keep the cabbage worms off. I've not been successful in keeping aphids off of my plants. I mean, they can get,
Hmm.
and they're so tiny. They can get through that netting. They can get under that netting. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah, that's
something that, like, it's not going to help with that. If you have, same with spider mites, like it's not going to stop those. So you have to be really diligent. That's the trick with netting too, is sometimes when you have the netting on those plants, you're not always noticing what's going on the kind of
mhm.
smaller level. So you could have aphids in
Yep,
there and not realize it. And so I
yep,
think it's important, if you're netting your plants, and this really goes for netting anything, it's important to be diligently looking under there, looking up close at your plants and making sure that you don't have other problems happening. Because they, like, as much as the netting helps, there's a thousand other critters that like get under there and think, oh, this is a wonderful protected environment and we're just going to go to town.
yeah,
So it's it's always kind of a toss up with
Yeah, yeah.
growing like
And
that.
one of the things though too, and I think is great for the netting in a sense, and making sure you've got at least the type of netting that's going to keep some of these cabbage moths off of your plant, is because, and I think it's important to at least start there, because that's like one of the earliest things that's going to just start going to work on your brassicas and doing those sort of things. So if you can net and protect them from those, then what you're just giving your plant an even better chance at being healthier, stronger. That way it does resist some of those smaller ones just a little bit better. Although, again, washing and getting out there and making sure you're staying on top of that sort of stuff as you start seeing that, so it doesn't populate too much or become a bigger problem. Or even if it is, getting some of that stuff out of there so it doesn't affect other plants as well too, in some senses. But yeah, getting early protection from some of those, because gosh, those cabbage worms can be really damaging, and so that takes a lot away from a lot of that health of the plant as it moves down later in the season to deal with some of those other pests as well too. So really protecting it from those first waves is kind of a good important things to do.
It is. And that is an excellent point, and not just for Brussels sprouts, but for any plants that you're growing. If you can get your seedlings established and healthy and allow them to really put on some vigorous growth and healthy root systems, they're going to be so much better able to fend off pests and diseases than a weak stunted plant. So like someone in the comments on one of my videos was asking me about eggplant. And that was something that I responded to them is, in my area, I don't think eggplant's difficult to grow, but flea beetles are a huge problem. And what I noticed with that is, if I can net those plants and allow my eggplants to get really well established, I can eventually take that netting off and the flea beetles come and they nibble on the leaves. But since my plant is already strong and vigorous, they can withstand that little bit of flea beetle damage. Whereas if the flea beetles were allowed to get in there when that plant was young, they'll completely decimate it and destroy it, and it'll weaken it and kill it. So sometimes it really is just about protecting your plants long enough to, again, get that healthy root system in particular.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we just want to give them the best chance that they can. Let's see here, get some more questions in. I love it, Jenna. You bring about a lot of great questions here. That's great. That's awesome. So let's see here. Serena was asking, when onions sprout while storing, do you cut it out to transplant it? Oh, I'm thinking like, okay, so like if you have an onion you've brought in, but it's been around a while enough and it's starting to regrow, do you cut it and replant it or transplant it out? I'm not sure.
I have seen instances where people do that. They will plant out their sprouted onions and they have success with that. I don't typically, because I'm just
for greens,
frankly,
I'm
over it at that point. Yeah. So
for greens, because I don't think it's going to regrow a bulb again.
Right. So yeah, you could cut them, you can grow them, you could actually just pop them in a pot, on your kitchen counter and let them keep sprouting up, and that does work really well. So it's I typically don't do that with my bulb onions, but I will do that with, like, if I've got green onions, I'll just stick those little bulbs in a pot of soil and let them keep going in the house. But yeah, you could do absolutely the same thing with a bulb onion when it sprouts.
Yeah, it's a good idea too. If you got a good handful of green onions and you're using the greens, take those little bulbs, put them in a little jar or pot or something with some water, let them they'll probably grow back again a couple of times before those bulbs lose energy, because they will eventually lose energy, and I've done it before, but you can get some more growth out of them if you're just looking for some more onion greens. And the same thing with like onion tops is what I think that she's talking about there, is you're just kind of regrowing them for the greens again. So cut the greens back, put them in some water, or again, like you said, on a pot, just or something like that. Let them grow the greens back, cut them. Yeah. You might get a couple of more sets of greens out of them before they kind of fade out. All right, let's see here. Gina was asking, what are you most excited to grow this upcoming season? Any new varieties of anything? yeah, that's kind of, again, too, that's where we're at. We're thinking about this next coming season. Anything got you excited? Something that you're, you know, anything new?
Yeah, so like this is my Gina may know that this is my bread and butter here. I geek out over varieties big time.
Mm-hmm.
I love trying new stuff. I'm constantly trialing new varieties. This year, I am really, really focusing on disease and pest resistance. So it's maybe not the most exciting thing in the whole world. I mean, I know that there's so many beautiful plants and so many flavors that are worth getting excited over. But if you have pests and diseases that destroy everything before you can harvest anything, they don't do any good. So I've really
Right.
focused on a handful of like what I consider my top issues here in Ohio, and I'm doing specific trials for them. So I'm really excited. I've got a vine borer resistant kabocha squash that I'm trialing this year. Squash vine borer is a major problem, and I struggle with it a lot here in Ohio. So I'm excited to try that one out. I've got a couple cucumbers that I'm testing out. Specific issues that I have are the bacterial wilt pathogen that's spread by cucumber beetles is a major issue here. So I'm looking at varieties that have either resistance to the actual bacterial wilt, or they're less attractive to cucumber beetles in the first place. I'm
Right.
also looking at varieties with anthracnose resistance. So I've looked a lot at like downy and powdery mildew resistance, but anthracnose is something that I've not paid a lot of attention to before, but it seems to be an increasing problem here in recent years. So I'm looking at several varieties that are resistant to that. Um, I'm also cucumber related. I'm testing out more varieties for indoor growing. So over the last couple years, I've been trialing different cucumber varieties for growing indoors during the winter and have had some really tasty ones, but I'm looking at kind of maximizing production for plant size. So the first one that I started with was a variety called Quick Snack. It's delightful, but it's from a series called Kitchen Minis, and it only grows at 2 feet tall, maybe at the max. And so you only get
Mm,
like a handful of cucumbers off of it. And I was like, well, this is really fun, but it's not worth my
right.
time. So this past year, I tried another variety that worked really well, but now I've kind of gone nuts and I've bought several various ones that I'm in the midst of trialing right now. So I'm excited to see how that turns out. Um, I'm also I'm doing a paste tomato trial. So
Okay.
a question that I get commonly, people want to know my recommendations for paste tomatoes. And I have a
Right.
few, but because I just typically use my beefsteak tomatoes for making paste and sauce, I've never done a full on like test of paste or sauce varieties.
Right.
So I pulled together, I think I've got a dozen varieties that are specifically paste tomatoes that I'm going to be trialing this year,
Oh,
just
that'll
to
be
see,
fun.
again, it's quality of the finished sauce that I'm looking at, but also I'm picky about fresh eating quality. I don't know if you've noticed this with yours, but a lot of times when I grow specific paste or Roma tomatoes, their fresh eating quality is terrible because they're bred
Yes.
for paste. And I
Exactly.
really would prefer to have something that I can eat both fresh and make into a sauce. So I'm going to be looking at fresh eating quality, and also, of course, that disease resistance. Because while tomatoes grow like weeds here in my climate, we again have a
Yeah.
lot of issues, as I mentioned before, with like the bacterial and fungal pathogens on tomatoes, especially because of our typically humid summers. So things like septorial leaf spot, bacterial speck and spot, the early and late blights, all of those lovely diseases are issues with tomatoes. So I'm going to be looking at how these varieties hold up plant health wise as well. So I'm excited about that test also.
Yeah, yeah, that does sound like a great one. I haven't thought to try that out, but that would be a good I've done kind of themed tomato years, you know, like one year I grew all darks, you know, we did all
Oh,
dark tomatoes, and then there was like colorful. So we were trying to make a lot of color, you know, so we are doing tomatoes of different colors versus just red, you know,
yeah.
and all of that though. So let's see here real quick. I saw this one here. Brian was like, aren't cherry tomatoes too much work? Oh no, they're like the same. Those are the easiest things in the world right there.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's
You want to talk about like if you were looking for things that are resistant or just grow really well, you know, and even for containers, small spaces, because containers, you got to have good sized containers to get a good sized tomato. Say you're growing a beefsteak or one of those other big ones, you know, the containers are going to limit the size of those fruits. Cherry tomatoes are perfect for most containers because you know you're not looking to get something very big, so they usually really, I think cherry tomatoes are the best when it comes to just
I I
simple,
do enjoy.
easy, and guaranteed to get some.
Yeah, and that's the trick too. It's pretty much they will typically grow better than almost anything else. They yield like crazy. And again, there's a difference in varieties too, but I do think they are easier to grow than a lot of other tomatoes. I do. That comment made me chuckle though, because sometimes I will plant way too many cherry tomato varieties in a year, and then I'm out there when it's like actually harvest time, and I'm like, why did I do this? Because I hate picking cherry tomatoes. Like the picking to me is the part that's
Right.
too much. So
Yeah.
it's like I would much rather go out and pick a larger fruited tomato any day. I honestly, a lot of times when I've like last year, I was a participant in the All American Selections trials, and there
Yeah.
were like I think 9 different cherry tomato varieties. So I had like what felt like hundreds of cherry tomato plants, and it just they were all completely loaded with fruit, so productive, so hardy. Like by like September, I'm like, I can't pick another cherry tomato. I just can't do it. So we let our chickens out there, and same thing they did with the blueberries. They'll just jump up and peck cherry tomatoes right off the vines, and they seem to love it. So I was like, well,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
saves me the work of cleaning them up.
Right. Right. That's why he says that's why I don't do beans. Too much work. The picking, yeah. Well, the harvesting sometimes can be a bit of work. That's for sure, especially when you got some things that are really productive and all of that. But I got this cherry tomato that I got from an old YouTuber, Ray Browning, from an old channel called Praxis 55712, and he gave away these what he grew and developed himself, a Prax cherry tomato. And I grow those. They actually volunteer for me every year. They're like my favorite thing out of
Oh,
all
that's
of
really
my
cool.
tomatoes. But they're also a cherry that's just big enough to where they're not, they're not small. I don't know. They're like little mini full size tomatoes almost, and they're just perfect. But they're really, I don't know. I just love those tomatoes. It's one of my favorite things is to go out and pick those tomatoes as well too. So I love my cherry tomatoes if you've got the right varieties. And that's again too
Yeah.
coming down to kind of what you're talking about too. And another point too, I think I wanted to make when you were talking about that and about varieties and stuff, and then we're also talking about disease and other things as well too. That is kind of a big answer to a lot of different questions of dealing with certain things is variety sometimes, is
Yeah.
because some varieties can be really resistant to some things that can be really prominent issues for you in your garden. So sometimes if the issue becomes such a problem that it's hard just to deal with it and manage it, sometimes looking for varieties that will fit some of those issues as well too, right?
For sure. I mean, I would go so far as to say like it is the answer. I mean, I
Yeah,
again
yeah,
being like doing seed trials for so many years, I'm sure I'm biased, but I have seen what a difference variety selection can make in it really is the difference between having a successful year and having just utter failure, especially when
yeah,
you're growing in a region that is disease prone. I'm sure there are places that are not like Ohio where you can grow pretty much whatever you want and it all does beautifully. Like I've seen gardens in California that look like that. But when you're growing in a place like I'm thinking again, like the Midwest can be this way, the deep South with all their humidity, just anywhere where you have disease issues or pest issues, if you are struggling, the very best thing that, to my mind, that you can do is to seek out varieties that have resistances to the specific issue that you are dealing with. And I know that we all love our heirlooms, but if you're just really struggling to the point where you can't grow something, so let's say tomatoes with like late blight, go just do yourself a favor, seek out some varieties that have late blight resistance and try those for a couple of years while you work on holistic methods to deal with that pathogen in other ways, but just in the meantime to get you through. And there's really, I think, again, with tomatoes, the hybrids kind of got a really bad rap because what we saw in the grocery stores early on were tasteless and horrible. But tomato hybrid breeding has come such a long way from 10, 20 years ago that you can find almost any pathogen resistance in a package that's also going to give you a good, excellent eating quality tomato. So just like figure out what you're dealing with, look for varieties that have that resistance. And in the meantime, also look at all of the holistic ways that you could help reduce that pressure. So what I mean by that is, again, in the instance of tomatoes, with something like a blight, you rotating your crops, covering the soil with a mulch so you're not getting splash up during rain or irrigation of those pathogens, looking at giving your tomatoes plenty of air circulation. There's all types of things like that we can do to help. Again, it goes back to kind of what we were talking about before, just making sure that your plants are very, very healthy, because they're then going to be able to better deal with those pathogens when those pressures appear. But I highly recommend also combining that with varieties that are disease resistant.
And that's in disease. And then also too, in my instance, I had to go to a more variety method of what I grow versus, again, too, just any old. I used to be able to grow like any old tomato where I live and everything. It just I had no problems. Any heirloom, any sort of tomato I wanted to grow, and now I have to be really, really picky, more so because of my climate. Now I've got my summers are really getting extremely hot, and so I've had to kind of move towards more heat resistant varieties of tomatoes and stuff too. So there's lots of different angles on different things we're dealing with as far as issues in the garden, where variety selection can be really key to getting some success and getting something out of our garden and not a bunch of wasted time.
Yes. And that's the thing. I mean, everyone's so busy. It's heartbreaking to see someone put the amount of time and effort needed into growing a garden and then to not have success. I mean, that's like Jay mentioned earlier. That's why we're seeing a 70% drop off of new gardeners, because they're going to not entirely, but I think in part because they're going to like Lowe's and they're grabbing a tomato off the shelf. And when those tomatoes are merchandised, they're not looking at like, oh, I'm a garden center in Ohio. What's the best tomato variety I can offer my customers here in Ohio?
Yes.
They're not doing that. They're just sticking whatever the best seller nationwide is in the garden centers. And that's what people are buying.
Don't go out and don't buy those Bonnie plants.
No, don't. Go to your, if anything, go to your little local, family-owned garden center where people that have owned it have gardened for years and years and can actually talk to you about plants. Like, go to those people. Something I did want to mention though, because I hate to forget mentioning this when I'm talking about variety selections, and I don't want everyone to think that I'm pushing hybrids all the time, because if you want to grow heirlooms, but you have issues with disease, what I highly, highly recommend for folks, and I mean, this is a process that's going to take more patience, but you can get open pollinated and heirloom varieties, plant them out, and then do the work of actually selecting for your climate. So that would look like maybe, say you want to grow black crim tomato, which is an open pollinated heirloom. Plant out a population of black crim, let them do what they will, and at the end of the season, take the plant that is the healthiest and has produced the best and save the seeds from that plant, and then plant out those seeds next season and continue that selection process. And eventually you will end up with your own selection of black crim that is highly adapted to your specific growing conditions. I should be doing more of that. Everyone should be
Mhm.
doing that to the extent that they can, because
Exactly.
I mean, it's really the best way to get plants that are adapted to your environment. With the cost of seeds going up, it's just a
Yeah.
great skill to have. But again, I think that's something where, like, plant your hybrid with disease resistance, and it kind of like in the meantime, and then as you have more time and space available for doing like open pollinated selection work, give that a
Mhm.
try.
Yeah,
Keep in
yeah.
mind that those do have to be separated so they don't cross pollinate, but it's definitely something that's doable with open pollinated varieties.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's just, man, that would be such a really great book of someone to put together some, just put together that idea of variety selection for, for garden success in a sense. I think you probably you should that should be a book. There you go. Write a book
I
on that sort of thing, because I
Well,
think
I
that
was
would
just
be
thinking,
really
I'm like, that sounds like a book that exists, and I'm looking here at my bookshelf, and
yeah.
like I don't know if I'm nearly certain
I'm
that
sure
something
there
like
might
that
be
does.
touching on it in some places, in some sort of book somewhere.
I think
I'm
there
sure that
is.
sort of
I
stuff, but something that's just really dedicated to variety selection. And you would be the person
oh.
to write that book for sure.
Well, that's
Well, you got one.
unfortunately. I feel like my expertise is not, like, I'm really just a novice in that regard. But there is
Yeah.
this. I don't know if you probably can't see that.
No, you have to
Sorry.
maybe right in front of yourself, maybe.
It's
There
plant.
you go. There you
No, that's
go.
not going to work. Plant
Just put it
breeding
right
for
in
the
front of
home
your face
gardener.
almost. Yeah. There you
That
go.
work?
Oh, well,
Nope.
almost, almost.
It's it's Plant Breeding for the Home Gardener by Joseph, with a last name I can absolutely not pronounce. But
Okay, yeah. All right. Some plant breeding there.
if anyone is
So that's
familiar
kind of
with
a
that book,
breeding and
yes.
all that. Definitely. That's a
Um,
good way. That'll get some resources on that.
so yeah, it's something I mean, I've had people ask about, like, seed saving and seed selection. So it's something that I'm hoping in the future to share more of on my channel. But like I said, I just feel like God, there's so many people out there that are more knowledgeable in that specific field of gardening than I am, that it's like, I don't want to talk about things that I don't feel like 100% confident about in my own
Right. I'm the same
ability.
way. Bro, the same the way. I have a hard time with any sort of expressing expertise. I
Yeah.
just there's just I don't know, there's just something to me, it's like I feel like there's a million times more for me to learn when
Yes.
it comes to anything almost. So I have a hard time. And
Yes.
it's been one of those issues I've had with like directing my content even towards specific things that I'm trying to try to do this year. Because I know there are things that I have good enough knowledge to teach and pass on to people and all that. I just got to get over the fact that I have this kind of like internal expertise bias, like I'm just not I don't think I know enough to really be expressing what I'm saying about things sometimes. So I get how you feel about that, but we'd be surprised what we know and what we can really teach and educate and help other people with. And I think that also kind of brings it back to another thing we were talking about and discussing with Jay just a little bit earlier, and it kind of ties in with some of this stuff as well too, is that through community and all of that too as well, which is a great thing in gardening, and something I've been really focusing a lot on lately, is this idea that yeah, it's great we get to gather here, and you're in Ohio, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so you're in Ohio, I'm in Southern Oregon. We got a lot of people watching here from actually around the world even, so it's great to have this really great general garden knowledge to express certain things about how they work for me here and all that sort of stuff in all these different places. And in some senses, I like to, say, let's pass out, hand out some really good general knowledge here online. Let's get together and gather, have conversations and inspire and all of that. But then I'm really thinking this idea more so that community is where we're really going to find some really great answers to a lot of these things that we're talking about or that we're
Absolutely.
dealing with in our garden. Because let's get together and find, if there isn't one in our area, let's make one too. But a garden group or a club or something, again too, or you could just go find some community gardens. Those are basically garden clubs, when it comes down to it. Finding these places and people and ways to connect with gardeners and people right there in your neighborhoods, right there where you're at, because now you can find some gardeners who've got some little bit of expertise in growing right in your area, right where you grow. And then they're going to probably be able to hand you some varieties and things that they know and succeed with each and every year because of some of those issues that you're dealing with and they've dealt with already before, some of these pests issues and these different things, or temperature tolerant issues, as I was talking about with tomatoes and stuff. We're going to find all those really great key questions that will really truly help us succeed the most, is going to be most close, the gardeners most closest to us that we can
Yeah.
find when it comes down to it. And that's not to push away from anything that we have to say or anything that we're doing out there, because in some sense I think the more we talk about gardening and help inspire gardening, the more people will grow, and maybe we can bump that 70% down a bit, and we can get more and more people to garden each and every year and find successes and those sort of things and all of that.
Yes, definitely. I think you're spot on with that. And I would add to that too, like in my experience, some of the biggest, like the wealth of knowledge is coming from folks that are like, probably would be my grandparents or maybe even my parents' age, people that grew up with gardening in this area. And they don't, they're not necessarily online. They're not doing anything like fancy or trendy, but they just have this innate knowledge of like
Mhm.
the soil and the varieties that work. And just, I think it's just kind of this untapped wealth of knowledge from the older generation that I think it's important that we don't let that kind of disappear without learning.
Yeah.
And I've heard from so many people, especially I feel like people my age, that their parents were kind of like the first generation that didn't garden. So their grandparents were gardeners, but then their parents kind of gave it up because both parents were out of the home working and didn't have time.
Mhm.
And so they didn't grow up with any gardening background. And I've even heard people say like, oh, I wish I would have paid more attention to what my grandparents were doing or what they could have taught me. And so I think it is important to kind of pick up on that knowledge wherever we can get it from whomever. Like if your grandparents didn't garden or maybe unfortunately are no longer with you, like if there's
Mhm.
another, if you can get like an adopted grandma or grandpa and learn this knowledge from
Yeah.
them, a great opportunity. But again, that kind of goes back to what Jay was speaking to, is like adopting a novice gardener. So if
Exactly.
you're a
Yeah.
person that has a lot of expertise or has enough expertise to share, to kind of take a new
Yeah.
gardener under your wing. I love that
Yeah,
idea.
gardening sponsorship, I
Yeah,
love that idea
yeah,
as well too. Is finding people. And again too, that comes with this whole sense, and I think more and more is just got to be the sort of sense of, let's find those gardeners nearest us, let's build community closest to us, let's share in this garden information and knowledge and all of that, and then find more successes and everything too. And again, you know follow along with what we've got growing on and talking about too, when it comes to like your channel and others who we get to feature right here on the show, is we just really in the long run are just growing community to better inspire ourselves and other people to maybe do some of those things, like sponsor another gardener that's newer to gardening and growing, and help them find some successes, so that'll really generate that passion within them that they can find through just this really great. And again too, I've still not yet ever been able to find what we would call gardening as what this is, a pastime or a passion or all of that sort of stuff. But really, when it comes down to it, I think there's a green thumb inside every single one of us out there. And it's about, some of us helping people find it and help them
yeah,
find it.
yeah,
Right. Right on.
absolutely.
All right. Anything else we should know about coming up here as we're finishing up the show today, Jenna, coming up at Growfully with Jenna? In fact, I just do want to also mention to everybody too, we do have links right down in the description too. So if you haven't subscribed to Jenna's channel, which I'd be surprised if you haven't, but if you haven't subscribed to her channel, go down to the description below and there's a link there and you can go find her channel, subscribe, and go leave her a message on one of her more recent videos and let her know you saw her here on the Let's Get Growing show. But yeah, before we let you go, anything coming up we should know about?
I'm kind of blanking on. I will say, like, for anyone that isn't familiar with my channel, I mentioned I am growing in Ohio. I'm in Midwestern Ohio. I'm dealing with like heavy clay soil, so that's an issue that a lot of people have come to me commiserating the issues of dealing with that soil type. And I do primarily edible gardening. So I was still am a trial seed manager for years. So I grew out all kinds of vegetable varieties and basically evaluated them over the season and gave feedback to seed companies. I still do a small amount of that independently, but if you watch any of my videos, you'll see that mentioned. You'll also see that, like I said before, I geek out on varieties. So every year I've got hundreds of varieties that I'm growing. I like to do an end of the season recap of all my favorites, specifically the things that have done the best in my Ohio gardens. I also do fruit, but vegetables are definitely my specialty. So I do fruit trees, small fruits. I do edible and medicinal herbs, and a little bit of like native plants. But I'm not a big landscape type person. If you can't eat it, I'm not going to waste my time growing it or babying it along. So it's all about the food with me. And I will say, like, for this season coming up, I kind of had I'd say over the last year and a half, I really had to slow down the amount of videos that I was putting out. Like, I just was not able to even keep up with like a video a week, which used to be my goal. I'm hoping to ramp that back up for the 2025 season, to where I'm doing videos a little more frequently. I can't make any promises.
We're in the same boat.
But yeah, I'm hoping to have more content out. I'm hoping to address, I know I've had people asking for specific video topics, a lot of like, again, like dealing with specific diseases and pests, dealing with growing specific crops. So I really trying to address a lot of those requests that I've had from viewers this year. So we'll see. I'm hoping I can keep my energy up to get as much of that done as possible. So yeah, that's that's the plan.
I feel you on the video production. I had to relearn my editor and do all sorts of stuff and got kind of caught behind on things. So starting up this year, that's been my big goal, is to put out more video content as well this year. And then let's see. Okay, real quick here. Meyer Lemons did jump in with this question a couple times. Real quick, before we let you go, you got some varieties you can name off real quick for pickling or making relish.
Yeah, pickling, so I do
relish,
but I'm gonna have to look at my cheat sheet here. So for anyone who's not familiar, I do have a blog. And on that blog, I provide access to my spreadsheet of trial varieties. So my favorite varieties that I've trialed of pretty much every vegetable since, I think it's like 2012. So if you're looking for product or specific variety recommendations, definitely check that out. But as far as picklers specifically, I have had really, really good luck with quite a few varieties, actually. I really like Supremo for a pickling cucumber. Let me see, Daphne and Anya have done really well for me. Pick a Little if you need one for a little bit smaller space. Supermax has done well for me. H19 Little Leaf is a great, like, highly disease resistant variety. And let's see, I really also like the variety Gherkin. I've had some issues because it succumbed to anthracnose the last time that I grew it in my gardens. So I'd say that's the only real downfall, but I like that one because it's a smaller, like a true gherkin type. It also has really good fresh flavor, and it's a little bit more of a restricted plant, so you can grow it in a smaller space versus typically I grow my cucumbers up big, like my cattle panel trellises, so they take up a lot of room, and that one's a little bit more of a restricted habit. But yeah, that's just a few of the pickling varieties that have done really well for me.
Oh, right on, right on, right on. Excellent. And good to get that in there real quick. And also, too, again, thanks to you for spending your Saturday with us to answer all these just amazing, awesome questions that you all had here. Thanks again, everybody, for joining with us, too. And like I said, I've got a link down below to Jenna's channel, Growfully with Jenna. I do believe Jay just dropped a link in our chat right now for growfullywithjenna.com, where you can find her blog, and I think you can find that list that you're talking about there, right?
Yep.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So again, thanks again for joining with us here. Oh, and thank you for actually hosting for a little while there. That was quite an unexpected surprise for today's show. But you did. I mean, I was really so glad. I was like, oh man, she's just taken right over. This is perfect.
Well, that was thanks to one of these wonderful viewer suggestions to start answering questions, because I was a little bit lost there for a second.
We're gonna have to try that sometime and have you for a special guest host someday or something like that. I think you'd probably have fun. You'd probably do really well at this here. But no, it was really great to have you here today. Lots of great fun talking gardening with you here. Maybe again we'll get you back here and later on in the season down the road, as you were saying, when you get to the end and you're talking about the varieties you found that work best this year. Maybe we'll catch up with you and see how some of those have done and everything. So yeah. And Brian's right here is Maker the co-host. I know, right? But no, again, thank you so much. And I don't want to keep you too much today, but again, so much great knowledge. And I hope everybody got a lot from today's show. And really, really awesome to have you here with us today, Jenna.
Well, thank you. It's always a lot of fun talking to you. Thank you.
Yeah. And again, like I said, we'll have to have you back again sooner this time. But again, so good to see you. Thanks again.
You too.
All right. Again, like I told you, I say this, and again, most weekends anyways, it's the same thing. We always have really, really great guests. But like I said at the beginning of the show, you were in for a great show today. Really great conversation with Jenna, talking all about onions and answering a bunch of different questions, and just a fun gardening conversation in general. Just really enjoy that. And again, also to thank you to Jay for taking her time to jump out of the chat box there for us a little bit at the beginning of the show to talk with us a little bit about what she's got growing on this year, and some great conversation a little bit too there. We got to touch on with both conversations really this kind of subject I'll be, and I touch on and talk about plenty, but we'll talk a lot more about it as we move forward too, because like I said, it's just been really on my mind a lot, about community and building community through gardening and that sort of stuff. So again, too, really wonderful to touch on that as well in our conversation today. Also, really thank you so much to all of you. Like I said, I got on today getting ready for the show and saw people were already jumping in and already conversating, already talking about gardening and all of that. So it really got me excited about getting things going today and growing, because again, this is so much fun for me to be able to get together here with all of you every weekend on our show. Like I said, we are here always every Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern. And it's just so much fun to get together with all of you every weekend and have this just really great, fun gardening conversation with everybody. So again, thank you so much. And also too, I do want to mention, if you did get a chance to check out last week's show, last week on the show, we had joining with us from down under, down in Australia. We had Marty Ware from Marty's Garden on the show last week. A really fun conversation with him. Whereas today we're talking a little bit more about colder weather and we're all dealing with winter. Marty was joining with us last week from Australia, of course. So they're right in the middle of their summer gardening and all that. So it was really fun to talk with him all about what he's got growing on down under there, as well as we got to meet Scott from New Garden Road. So again, too, you want to go back and check out last Saturday's show if you didn't get a chance to check that out. Go check out our conversation with Marty in Australia and meet Scott there on our Are You Following Me? And again, like I mentioned too, we are here every Saturday and Sunday. That means tomorrow will be our Sunday edition of the show. We've got Sunday edition again starting at 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern. And on our Sunday edition of the show tomorrow, we'll have with us, joining us, our good friend Christopher Bransdahl, joining us from all the way in the cold mountains of Norway. And our friend Mike Van Ducey from Keep On Growing, and he'll be joining us from down in Florida. So we'll be talking a little bit more, though, too, on tomorrow's Sunday edition about kind of hydroponic growing. These two are really kind of masters at growing without soil. So we'll kind of touch on growing food. Mike is really great at growing microgreens and soilless microgreens, all these sort of things. So we got a lot of really great fun things to talk about tomorrow on our gardening roundtable with Christopher and Mike. So you'll definitely want to join with us for that conversation. And again, too, if you didn't get to see last week's conversation, too, we had joining with us Deborah Trentham, author of Botanic Gardens of the World. This was our monthly gardening book club selection for last month. Botanic Gardens of the World, just an amazing book. She joined with us from Italy, so it was great. My co-host Mark from up in Portland and I to have our monthly garden book, and joined with Deborah from Italy, talking all about her book Botanic Gardens of the World. If you missed that conversation, you'll definitely want to go back and check that out. Definitely want to check out that book. Our next month's book selection, though, too, for this month, month of February, is What We Sow by Jennifer Jewell. So we're going to be reviewing the book What We Sow. I've already got my copy now. I know Mark's got his copy. We're already starting to dig in and read this really great book, and we'll have Jennifer joining with us on the third Sunday. Remember, the third Sunday of the month for our monthly gardening book club, and we'll be reviewing What We Sow this month. And then remember, on the second Sunday of the month too, if you didn't get any garden questions answered today with Jenna, save those questions and come join with us on the second Sunday of the month, and we'll have with us Gardener Scott. Scott Wilson from the Gardener Scott channel joins with us every second Sunday of the month to answer all of your gardening questions. And one more promo, one more for next Saturday's show. We'll have join with us Vikram Baliga, the plant professor. He's a professor at Texas A&M and teaches all about horticultural, agricultural subjects and all of that. So he has a really great, fun YouTube and reels and all these sort of things that he does, debunking gardening myths and all that sort of stuff. So we'll have a fun conversation with Vikram Baliga next Saturday on the show. So again, lots and lots of great things going on here on the Let's Get Growing show. And again, I hope you all come and join with us here. And if you are here, before we end the show too, click that like button, hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already to all of our upcoming live streams and videos, share with all of your friends, and of course follow all the links down in the description below to our guests. And go, and like I said, I love it when you guys do this. Go over to one of the things that they've got on their channel, maybe one of their more recent videos or a community post or something like that, and go give it a like, go jump in their comments, and let them know you saw them here on the Let's Get Growing show. And again, thank you all so much. It's so wonderful to see all of you here, and I look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow. Again, same time, same place, right here on the Urban Gardener channel for our Sunday edition, and I'll see all of you then.